A hand emerges slowly from darkness. The rest of the room is almost invisible. The scene is from The Calling of St. Matthew. At first glance, this painting appears almost swallowed by darkness. Only a few faces, a hand, a sudden beam of light. Everything else disappears into shadow. Two centuries later, painters would do something completely different. They would flood their canvases with light. They would paint sunlight, reflections, atmosphere. Artists like Claude Monet would try to capture the vibration of the visible world itself. So how did Western painting travel from the mystical darkness of the Baroque to the scientific light of Impressionism? And what invisible reality were both movements trying to reveal? Behind every great painting there is an invisible idea, a way of seeing the world. This is the inner code of art. Art history often tells a simple story. The Baroque period is spiritual, dramatic, religious. Impressionism is modern, secular, and scientific. One belongs to faith, the other to physics. But beneath these differences lies a surprising connection. Both movements were obsessed with something invisible. For Baroque painters, that invisible force was divine presence. For the Impressionists, it was light itself. In both cases, the artist was not simply painting objects, they were trying to paint experience. Not what things are, but what it feels like to see them. For centuries, European painting had been dominated by a powerful idea inherited from the Renaissance. Reality, artists believed, could be understood through line and structure. Clear outlines defined objects. Figures were solid. Space was rational and controlled. Painters such as Raphael created compositions where everything appeared stable and intelligible. Nothing was ambiguous. Nothing was hidden. But reality is rarely so orderly. Light shifts, forms dissolve, emotions overwhelm structure. By the early 17th century, a new generation of artists began to feel that Renaissance clarity was not enough to express the intensity of human experience. And this is where the dramatic revolution of the Baroque begins. Few painters transformed the visual language of Europe as radically as Caravaggio. Caravaggio rejected idealized beauty. He painted ordinary people, dirty feet, wrinkled skin, real faces. But his greatest innovation was not realism. It was darkness. In paintings like The Calling of St. Matthew, entire sections of the canvas vanish into shadow. This darkness does something extraordinary. It forces the viewer to imagine what cannot be seen. The visible world becomes incomplete. And that incompleteness creates mystery. The light cutting through the darkness does not feel natural. It feels symbolic. A divine presence entering the physical world. For Baroque painters, the invisible was not an absence. It was the space where faith begins. "200 years later, artists would again challenge the way painting represented reality. But now, the invisible force was not God, it was light. Painters such as Claude Monet, Pierre-Auguste Renoir, and Camille Pissarro began to study the physical behavior of sunlight. Science had changed how people understood vision. Optics revealed that color was not fixed. It depended on light, atmosphere, and perception. Shadows were not black. They contained color. A white wall at sunset could appear pink. Snow could appear blue. The Impressionists realized that the world was not made of stable objects. It was made of light interacting with matter. Painting, therefore, should capture not the object itself, but the momentary sensation of seeing it. Consider Impression, sunrise. The harbor of Le Havre dissolves into mist. Boats appear as silhouettes. The sun is nothing more than a small orange disk. Yet the entire painting vibrates with atmosphere. Monet is not painting ships. He is painting morning light itself. In Bal du Moulin de la Galette, sunlight filters through trees and dances across faces and clothing. The scene is alive with movement. Instead of carefully modeled figures, Renoir uses flickering touches of color. The human body dissolves into the rhythm of light. Finally, in Monet's series of Rouen Cathedral series, the same building appears again and again. Morning, afternoon, sunset, fog. The cathedral itself barely changes, but the light transforms it completely. The subject is no longer architecture. It is time. Neither the Baroque masters nor the Impressionists were immediately accepted. Caravaggio's naturalism shocked many viewers. Religious figures looked too human, too raw, too physical. Similarly, the first Impressionist exhibitions were mocked by critics. Paintings seemed unfinished. Brush strokes were visible. Forms dissolved into patches of color. But these artists understood something fundamental. Reality is not stable. It is dynamic. Whether spiritual or physical, the world is always in motion. Baroque drama captured the energy of faith. Impressionism captured the energy of light. Both movements rejected the illusion that reality could be frozen into perfect outlines. So we return to our central question. How did painting move from divine shadow to scientific light? The answer is that both movements were searching for the same thing: the invisible forces that shape our experience of reality. For Baroque painters, that force was spiritual. For the Impressionists, it was physical. But the deeper insight is identical. The object itself is never the whole story. What matters is the space between the world and our perception of it. This idea was beautifully expressed by Claude Monet, who once said, "The subject is secondary. What I want to reproduce is what exists between the object and myself." In other words, painting is not about objects, it is about experience. And whether through divine shadow or vibrating light, great art reminds us that reality is always more mysterious than it first appears.